Hello, my name is Jason and welcome to Designcast. It's a podcast where I interview a wide range of guests and ask the question, how do you design education? Why is this important? Students all learn differently and need varied teaching methods to be successful. It is more important now than ever to accommodate and personalize education for all students as much as possible. I use my 25 years of experience as an educator to ask questions and to learn about the exciting things people are doing to provide for all students and their unique perspectives. Each episode, I chat with guests from all over the world, from classroom teachers, authors, consultants, and beyond. We chat around a range of topics that we feel are important right now. Will you join me in this journey to learn and grow together? If it's your first time here, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to check it out. If you like this podcast, please leave a review, rate, subscribe, share, and download from your preferred podcasting app. This helps the podcast get discovered by new listeners. Also, please use the hashtag Designcast when discussing your thoughts and feedback on your favorite social media platform. To connect with me, I would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening. So let's get on with the episode. On this episode of Designcast, I had the pleasure of chatting with my longtime friend and colleague, Dr. Barbara Wrightson. Spanning more than 25 years in the field of education, Barb's career has encompassed a myriad of roles in pre-K to 12 schooling, ranging from teacher of multiple secondary subjects to curriculum coordinator and administrator. Additionally, she teaches and trains teachers at the tertiary level. Throughout her time in the field of education, Barb has gained a wealth of knowledge, experience, and education about education, and has developed a talent for engaging in lifelong learning. Currently, Barb is a lecturer at Pacific Islands University in Guam and Handong Global University in South Korea. We talk about several topics, but our time discussing our thoughts about the future of education is fascinating and really shouldn't be missed. I have no doubt that our chat will leave you wanting to hear more. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy this chat with Dr. Barbara Wrightson. Welcome back to another episode of Designcast, and I'm just so absolutely thrilled to have my longtime friend, Dr. Barbara Wrightson, with me. Barbara, how you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. How you doing?
I'm making it, man. I'm making it, and it's just so good to talk to you. We talk a lot, and we've been talking about doing this for a long time, so I'm really happy that we finally have a chance to catch up and chat about just things that we feel are relevant in education. And so, Barb, if you don't mind, can you talk just for just a second to just sort of introduce yourself and talk about the things you've done?
Yeah, I'm Barbara Wrightson, and I've been involved in education now since, well, I guess 1993. I've taught overseas as in I'm an American, so outside of the United States, for pretty much the entirety of my career, with the exception of one semester of student teaching that I did in New York City and Spanish Harlem. But I've been overseas in Slovakia, Brazil, China, Korea, in international schools with multilingual clientele, building programs, worked in some startup situations, worked a lot with IB programs. I spent 21 years in IB schools, working with the MYP and DP as a teacher, set up the CP at school that worked out with Jason, and then also as an administrator, P to 12 administrator. I've also supported PYP through supervision evaluation of teachers and curriculum development, things like that. So long time in international education. Sometimes it seems like an eternity. And sometimes it seems like yesterday.
I completely agree. Thank you, Barb. That's awesome. I didn't realize you were in Slovakia. I think at some point I knew that, but that's How long ago was that? That was early on, wasn't it?
1993 to 95. I went there right after
Wow.
Czechoslovakia split. So January 1st of 1993, Czechoslovakia split into Czech Republic and Slovakia.
Wow.
So I went there in August of 93. Basically we helped birth a nation in some senses.
Right.
Students that were, the school I worked in was a bilingual school. It was the first bilingual school in the country, and amazing students. My students
Wow.
today are actually running the country. Many of them,
Wow.
they're doing amazing things. So yeah, it was a great time. Really great time. I loved it. Amazing students, amazing students.
Wow.
Just great students. Loved it.
That is super cool. I don't know. I just it never connected with me that you did that. So, wow, that's super cool. Quite the pioneer trailblazer. That's, I can only imagine it was a lot like the Wild West when you probably got there.
It was no telephones.
Yeah.
We had to go to one of the 5-star. There was only one 5-star hotel. I would take that back. There was one international 5-star hotel. So we would go there about every 6 weeks and hand over pretty much an entire month's salary to make an international phone call home to our families. No telephones, no internet, forget it, but not even telephones in people's apartments. And the school had a phone, but we weren't allowed to use it. They we could get it in, but we could give it out for emergency reasons.
Right.
The number out
Right.
for emergency reasons to our family, but we were not allowed to take calls unless it was just an emergency. And
Man.
it was wild. It was a wild time.
Good
But
old
it was
days,
fun.
right?
It was the good old days, And even my students, and I was only 22 when I went, and my students, some of them were 18, 19 years old. So they're all my friends now, right?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
they say that we talk about that a lot. There was no, it was you make a plan and you meet somebody because you had no way to contact them to change the plan, right? And so in terms of socialization, it was just a different era. And it was, people felt like it was, the good old days in some senses of I can't text you at the last minute to say, no, I'm not going, right? It's you just commit and you do it. Yeah. It was fun.
Wow.
It was a fun time. Great time.
That
I
sounds
loved it.
cool. I mean, can you imagine people now finishing college and going somewhere like that? That's sort of just opening up. And I mean, I don't think there's the adventurous spirit necessarily anymore.
Yeah.
Where
is left? I mean, even North Korea is connected now, right? There's nowhere left that's unconnected to. I shouldn't say nowhere, but there's very few places left that are completely unconnected to the rest of the world, or living, operating under those sort of novice. That's the word. It's not novice, but kind of very
basic, simple. Early,
simple, naive
nation.
Circumstances. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
wow,
it was wonderful.
That's totally true. Yeah, I can only imagine. My goodness, that's so much fun. Awesome. So I want to also ask you. So you and I talk a lot about how much we have seen change in education in our time, because I've been overseas not nearly as long as you, but I'm approaching the same amount of time. I spent a few years in the States working, but what kind of trends, what kind of future trends and things do you see possibly happening, especially as the world continues to open up post-COVID? What do you see? What are you seeing happening in not only international education, but just education in general?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And especially, Jason, and this too with your own children, you kind of witness education from a really close-up experience. Even though you're an educator and you've educated other people's children all these years. But I think what I see, even looking at my own children's experience, is just how it's the concept of that knowledge economy. It's it's gone. Knowing stuff doesn't really get you anywhere in this world, because knowledge is completely available at the click of a button on everybody's smartphone, right? So knowing things, so an education system that's built on knowing stuff is kind of unhelpful. It gets kids a grade or gets them through a system, but it doesn't actually prepare. There's no real world application happening when it's just about knowing stuff. And kids know a lot of stuff. And so I really think it's that whole idea of, what do they do with the stuff that they, how can they apply and build with what they know, build, create, problem solve with what they know. And because everybody, I also think there's a lot of not so standardized stuff that happens in the world today. I'm just with my youngest daughter was showing me she was like, Mama, do you want to see the Christmas halls? And I was like, what is the Christmas halls? And she was like, HAULS, halls. And I was like, okay, what's that? And so on TikTok, people are literally posting videos where they're, here's my stocking, and this is what I got, and this is what I got, and you just think,
oh my gosh.
And I was sitting here thinking, this is so interesting. Like, how is it that like people are captivated by watching other people talk about their Christmas things? Right? But like, so you just think, what is the world we are living in? And how?
Totally.
What education do we need to address the needs of kids who are so interconnected and so knowledgeable and so, just up to date with everything. So I think that this comes down to like tapping into everybody's potential, and that's why I think education really for years has been so standardized, but now the world we live in is just not standardized anymore. I think the individual potential is so much greater than it once was, as opposed to the collective potential that we had in the Industrial Revolution era model of education, right? So I think that personalization is really key to building effective education programming, and how do you tap into everybody's individual potential and their individual, specialties, but also, what kind of growth do they need? Where are their growth points, and what sort of development do they need in different areas? How do you build a model that does that? And especially when you look at maybe the public education model with large class sizes and things like that, like what does that do to make it work? Obviously post-COVID, or I guess are we post-COVID yet? I don't think we are, but
some places are. Not where I'm sitting, but yes, some places are.
I guess in endemic COVID era, as in theory, we're still in a pandemic.
But
anyway,
now,
yes, in the living with COVID era, we've all learned a lot in education about what to do in terms of technology and the use of the interfaces with all sorts of different types of tools for students and learners, what that can do to tap their potential and tap them as individuals, but also pace learning to meet their needs, and I think that's one of the fascinating things you see when you buzz around online or get your news feeds or whatever you do to keep up to date. Like, there's so much interesting tools out there that help foster individual and personal growth. And I think that's a big key of it, and I guess what the other thing I've been talking about with you a little bit, Jason, but with thinking about too is that whole UX or LX type idea of like, how are we designing for learning, which is fascinating. That's kind of grown out of the tech world. You would have thought it would grown out of the education world, but because we're the ones that specialize in learning, but the tech world has developed that whole concept of, design for the user or the learner, the person who's going to do something with it.
That's right.
And that's quite a fascinating concept to think about, is how do we design learning experiences for the learner instead of so focused on X, Y, or Z set of external things that need to be done with education.
Yeah, and it's so funny you mentioned your own kids, because your youngest daughter is the same age as my oldest son, and I was just walking with him the other day in the park, and we were talking about, he said, why do I have to go to school if everything everyone's ever known is in my hand on my phone? And I thought, you have a great question. You have a good reason. I said, but do you know how to use that information that's in your hand on your phone? And he's like, well, my teachers would say such and such and da-da-da. And, he's a 13-year-old, right? So he's going to look at this from an adolescent boy's perspective. But he has a point, and he says, well, it's to do this and then to do this and then to go to school and then to go to college and then to go to, like, he had this whole thing mapped out. And I said, where did you learn that? I said, I've never said that to you. And he says, well, that's what all my classmates tell me, or that's what this tells me. So even though you and I both agree, we see this all the time, not all parents necessarily share, because they know one construct and that's how it's worked for them to be successful. And they assume the construct is the same. And so I think it's interesting how we not only have to educate the students, but we have to educate the community in general, the wider community, about how education is changing. And so I think that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because we literally had that conversation this week. He's like, why do I have to go to school, man? And I'm like, that's actually a really, really intelligent question. And so, other than it's paying our bills, buddy, but yeah, that was super, super interesting. So where do you see then, how do you see LX and UX and this idea of personalization? How do you see that sort of trickling down into the classroom? What do you think might happen?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think I'm in the market for a new job, and it may be a bit of a career change too. We'll see. But I'm watching a lot of job boards from corporate America to education, for-profits, education, nonprofits, schools, universities, all sorts of it is interesting to see how that UX idea kind of plays into so many of the job descriptions that are out there. And it's fascinating to think of, like, I also start to wonder, are we as educators going to be put out of business too? Because there's an element to what's happening with UX, LX that do we need an educator to do it? And I mean, we would argue yes, right?
Yes.
We are the ones that study adolescent psychology and all this kind of stuff. But I don't know, the corporate world might speak a little bit differently about that too. And, I know people that are doing UX design that have little to no experience
contact
or education about education, right? And so that's where I wonder, what is that? It's that technology piece again, right? Of how much of technology just drives the world that we live in, whether it's the internet itself having been created as a piece of technology, all the tools and apps that are out there, but then all the learning that becomes accessible to a person because of the technology. And now we have this UX concept that seems to be infiltrating a lot of what's done online or when it comes to jobs and work and things. So I think it'll be a big player. I think it's a big player. And I think it's interesting to see also how many like education for-profits and nonprofits that are out there in the online world offering things to middle and high school students in particular, alternative options to a bricks and mortar school for them. And well, how does that happen? That happens through the UX model, right? Or the LX model. And I think, that's something that COVID taught us too, is like, you don't have to be physically present in one place or time to learn, right?
Right.
And so LX and UX, LX, whatever you want to call it, that concept is really fascinating to see how it's taking on the online learning world for sure.
I think over time, I mean, honestly, when computers were much more readily, much more available to the masses, everyone thought, well, this replaced teachers, and it didn't. When the internet became more pervasive and permeated into society, same question, right? So I think anytime something new comes along, people immediately assume, thinking about AI at the moment and how it can write everything for you. You just put a few keywords in and you're done, kind of thing. And again, I don't see, as you and I both have talked about many, many times, that education as a field is a behemoth. To try to turn that quickly, it will just capsize, right? So it's not possible to turn it quickly. I think the only thing that could have done it was a global scale crisis like we've just had. But even with that, once schools opened up, they went right back to what they were doing before. And I think but unfortunately, I think now their customers, their parents and their students are starting to demand more because they know they can have it a different way, right? So I'm interested to see that too. I mean, I don't think either one of you and I have the answer, but I think we can definitely think about it, I totally agree with you, Barb. I think there's a lot of things that could definitely come from that. It's super, super interesting to do that.
Yeah. And when you look at the AR and VR concept of that being infiltrated into education too, that whole, I mean, I don't know anything about it because I'm pretty kind of a tech idiot in many ways, but I do know that that's going to be huge. It is already making a big impact in education, but I think in terms of the personalization piece, the self-pacing of learning, or the whole idea of the mastery, the concept of mastery as opposed to standards-based, for example, and moving into those
micro-badging,
models.
the whole bit. Yeah,
absolutely. I think the AR and the VR pieces are big and going to be big, or are big probably already. We're getting bigger in all of that. And then our students learning how to how to do all that stuff sometimes. We learn a lot from them, don't we, in education?
Oh, no doubt. And the thing is, even if that information is accessible to them, they don't know how to use it properly, right? So, I mean, I think that teachers will have to retool the way they learn to teach. And so I think that's super important. Yeah, I mean, I was talking to someone earlier this week and said, if I had only learned how to use WordPerfect, I would have been left behind, right? But I had to learn the skills to be able to use something like WordPerfect. I don't even know if I think it's Open Office or something now, but the whole point being learning the workflow was more important than learning the actual app, right? And so I think that may be what teachers have to do is just retool, the way in which they deliver content. I think there's always going to be a need for an adult in the room to kind of make sure that things are doing what they're supposed to do, and so that's awesome, Barb. I mean, I'm excited. I think you and I were sort of towards the back half of our career, and so I think it may not be something we see in our own professional life, but we certainly can see it in our children's lives, right, and that kind of thing. And so I appreciate you sharing that with me. And Barb, I have a final question I want to ask you, because we could talk all day, and I know that you're very busy, but if you could travel back in time and talk to your younger self, what would you tell yourself?
My younger self.
Yep. Anytime.
I think one of the things I would tell myself is, I studied French in high school for 4 years, and I studied in the American high school system, so which means I never learned how to speak any French. And I was the president of the French club, and I was like the star of French class, but that was because I could read and I could read French pretty well. Anyway, I think I would tell myself, get multilingual as quickly as possible and maintain those languages, because I feel like that's, I learned Portuguese when I lived in Brazil pretty fluently, but that was because I had French to build on. But my French has never evolved into the way that it was. But I think multilingualism is a really important component of a good quality life and a good quality I mean, I know you know that from your own family experience too, Jason, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's important. And I think for young people because they are so connected, the world's so connected, and it's so easy for them to do different stuff with different people all over the world. And I think that multilingualism breeds the concept of multiculturalism too, and intercultural awareness, or whatever you want to call it, international mindedness, like pick a term, it's all kind of the same thing.
Exactly.
So I think that would be my big thing. And I also think I would have told myself to try to focus more on conceptual learning than content learning, even though I didn't grow up in a concept-based school, learning environment for the most part. I had one teacher that was pretty good at it, but I can see now how I got so obsessed with content. And then when I went off to college, I struggled a lot because I just, even though I was a great student in high school, I struggled a lot because I just couldn't put the big pictures together. And I think that is a key of just being a functional human being, is being able to sift and sort and categorize stuff that exists in the world, whether it's information or like other physical stuff, sift and sort it so that conceptually you can process it all and retrieve it when you need it and apply it when you need it. I think those are a couple of key things.
Great. Oh man, I was expecting you to say stuff like invest in Facebook or something like that, but that sounds good to me, man. That's awesome. Yeah, no. That's so funny, Barb.
Invest in Facebook. Oh no, man.
Well, listen, I know that we could just talk and talk and talk all day long. But I'm cognizant of your time, and I appreciate the time you've given me, and I'm hoping we can do this again before too long and kind of see where things have gone. But thank you so much for your time, Barb. I'll make sure all your contact stuff that you want to share is available through the show notes. So anyone who wants to maybe get in touch with you or follow you on Twitter or on LinkedIn or whatever, that'll all be there in case people want to do that. But thank you so much for your time, Barb. I really appreciate it.
Sure thing. Cheers, mate.
I hope that you enjoyed that episode of DesignCast. Again, I'm Jason. I am the creator and host and one-man band when it comes to this podcast. I sincerely hope you enjoyed it, and please share it with your colleagues and friends and help me network with those folks who you think will benefit from listening to this podcast. If you own a company or you have connections where you would like to partner with me in this podcast, whether it be sponsorship or product reviews or any other possible services, please reach out to me. My contact information is in the show notes, and I cannot wait to hear from you. I only do this because I love talking to people and I love sharing my passion with all the listeners. So if you are interested in possibly being a future guest, please reach out and get in touch. I can't wait to hear from you. I really want to hear about how this podcast and its guests are helping you become better or to enrich your lives. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, be good to one another. Thank you for being a loyal DesignCast listener. Without your support, this would not be possible. As a loyal part of my professional network, I want to share with you an exciting event that will be happening in January and February of 2023. I'd like to invite you to an upcoming series of professional development workshops, or PD Collective, organized by Classipy, a New Zealand-based global education organization. The Classipy PD Collective is a free, high-quality, online professional development workshop series that aims to bring together worldwide experts and leaders in education all on one platform. The focus is on uniting teachers across the globe so as to ease the process of international collaboration and make an impact on international education. I'm humbled to share with you that I am one of the key facilitators at this event. I'm presenting a session on the topic, Universal Design for Learning, and we're going to be doing a deep dive. And that's going to happen on February 4th, 2023 at 10 a.m. India Standard Time. Along with me, there are other prestigious keynote speakers and facilitators who will guide you through the progressive learning workshop model with productive sessions followed by tasks that will allow you to explore the Classipy platform in more detail. Please mark your calendar and save the date by registering for this event by visiting the link in the show notes. I'm looking forward to this 2 months of learning with Classipy, where we learn, grow, and collaborate with educators across the globe.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.